Randy Peterson, welcome to Practical Farmers.
Thanks, Tom. Hey, it's great to be here. As Tom says, I'm Randy Peterson. I'm a product specialist with AGCO. I focus on the Fendt tractor, Massey Ferguson tractors, white planters, sunflower tillage, and now the Gleaner combine and Heston hay tool products. I now travel the state of Wisconsin. So I grew up in a little city up in west central Minnesota. Anybody heard of a town called Morris, Minnesota? Little town of Hancock is where I grew up. Where I grew up on a farm. Never learned much, but we had a lot of fun. So I've been with AGCO. I started out with AGCO New Idea out of Fort Dodge, Iowa, July 31st, 1978. Now I know there's some in here that aren't quite that old yet. And I started out as a service rep fixing the uni system. How many remember the uni system? I'm so sorry. I learned, you ever heard of the School of Hard Knocks? I had a lot of hard knocks. But that was just the start of part of my life, I guess, more than anything, which was a tremendous part. The School of Hard Knocks, going out in the field, coming out to farmers, seeing what makes things tick. That's what has made me, I guess, who I am today. Now, before I get started, I like to start, as Tom knows, I like to start off with the little stories. I listen to the radio once in a while. There's a man on there called Joel Osteen. He's a minister. He starts off all his presentations with a little story. And one of them that I remembered, there's a couple been married 50 years, so they went to church and they had a little party for him. So somebody in the crowd asked the man, how did you do it for 50 years with your wife? He said, let me tell you a story. When we got married, my wife was raised on a little farm, had horse and buggy. So after our wedding, we took a ride on the horse and the buggy. So we were going down on the horse and buggy, all of a sudden the horse stopped. He said his wife got off the carriage, went and looked the horse right in the eye. She said, that's once. So she got back up in the carriage. She was driving. So they went a little farther and the horse stopped again. She got off the carriage, went up to the horse, looked him straight in the eye. She said, that's twice. So they took off a little bit longer and pretty soon the horse stopped again. She reached down in her purse, pulled out a gun, walked to the front of the horse, shot the horse dead right there. She got back up in the carriage. Her husband was just animated. He said, you can't do that. You can't shoot the horse. You can't do that. She looked him dead in the eye. She said, that's once. So I like to start off, to get everybody kind of relaxed a little bit. What we're going to talk about today is planters. How many guys have a John Deere planter? I'm sorry? No, I'm just teasing. How many have a Kinsey? How many have a Case? Anybody have a white planter? A few? Good. So again, I'm not here to sell any tillage or any planters today. What we're here to talk about, as Tom says, how do we make your planter better for next year? We have a few slides in here that hopefully are going to give you ideas. Now I'm going to ask some questions to you too. Like Tom says, hold your questions to the end, but I'm going to ask you guys some questions. See what kind of response we all get. So I've been with the white planter, like I said, since 1987 when White New Idea went together. I've learned more the last 2 years than I learned the previous 30. AGCO bought Precision Planting. I don't know how many know that. Precision Planting is a tremendous company out of Tremont, Illinois. They focus on one thing, and they do that thing very, very well. So we won't talk a lot about that, but other than to make it more personal for you guys, how can we make your planter better for next year? Let's take a look at that. The way in which a planter places the seed in the ground is one of the most important factors to the yield that a single seed will produce. Is planting controllable by the farmer? Absolutely. Some things we can control, other things we can't. Mother Nature is one of them we can't. But we have to plan and expect the best every year. This is probably one of my most favorite slides in the whole presentation. How can that one kernel make a cob like that? So let's take a look at that a little bit. How many have a phone on them, a calculator? Young man, you're going to be Vanna. I'm teasing. Don't hit me, please. How many feet are in a mile?
1,280.
Okay. How fast do you all plant? Take that times 4.5. How much is that?
23,760.
23,760 feet in 1 mile at 4.5 miles an hour. Okay? Now let's see how far we've gone in a minute. Divide that by 60 minutes.
396.
In 1 minute, at 4.5 mile an hour, we've gone 396 feet. Now divide that by 60 seconds. Let's see how far we've gone in a second.
6.6.
6.6 feet, about the length of one of these tables, right? Now, if you're going to plant, how many seeds an acre do you plant?
34.
34. So in 34,000 seeds to the acre, you're going to plant roughly 1 every 6 inches, right? So take that times 2, so we got 2 in a foot.
13.2.
13.2 seeds a second coming down this seed tube in 1 row. I don't care what color planter you have. Man, that's a lot of seeds in a second. Now, if you want to make it really unique, take it times the minutes, times hours. The point is, ladies and gentlemen, there is no room for error. Every seed needs to be planted perfectly. So, young man, you said you plant 34,000 seeds to the acre. Why do you do that?
Get a good final stand count.
Okay.
I'm organic.
Okay, perfect. I ask that question every meeting that I've been doing. Everybody pauses a little bit. Well, some guys say, my agronomist told me that. You know what the biggest answer I get? My dad did it that way. Why should I change? It's always good. 34,000 seeds to the acre. How many do you combine?
28 to 30.
Okay.
If we're lucky on the 30.
No, I understand. I get a lot of guys say, well, all of them. Or if I plant 34,000 seeds to the acre, the guy says, well, I'd like to combine 35,000 seeds to the acre. and I won't deviate from this, but I was in Hawaii last week, and I saw a young man with a T-shirt on. And I wish I could make this up, and it gets to what we're talking about. 5 out of 4 people have a problem with math. Now, I had to stop and think about that for a little bit. 5 out of 4 people have a problem with math. He's a bigger man. I said, sir, I like your T-shirt. I thought he was going to pummel me. But again, if you're planting 34,000 seeds to the acre, I want you to be able to combine 34,000 seeds to the acre, period. Now, because of germ and all that with the seed corn and all the differences, it can be probably not quite perfect. But to your point, young man, if you plant 34,000 and you combine 28,000, we're going to get into this a little bit more. Every seed that you miss, every cob that you miss is 7 bushels to the acre. So if you are missing 6 cobs times 7, how much is that? 42. Let's say on the average, not the average, let's just say you're planting 1,000 acres. How much is that? A lot of money. Yes, yes. So, even at a whole $3 a bushel, I understand that, but that's about $120,000, correct? So my question to the person, I actually had this happen to another person up in Wisconsin. I said, how long have you been planting like this? He said, the last 10 years. So all I'm trying to give you some ideas is, don't do things the same as you've done before. That's called what? Insanity. Doing the same things over and over and expecting different results. And I did this up in Wisconsin. We went out and did a stand check. How many go out in your fields and do stand checks? I hope all of you. Wonderful. This gentleman just got done chopping. He had 6 rows he left out. So we went out and we did a stand count with him. We counted 27 stocks, 26 harvestable years, which I didn't think was too bad. This is up in by northern Wisconsin. So we called him and said, it's not too bad, sir. He said, Peterson, I planted 34,000 seeds to the acre. So he missed 8 cobs. he planted 3,000 acres that way. And he'd done it for the last 5 years. Again, I'm not here to make anybody feel bad. My job is to help make you better for next year, however we can do it. And right now we're going to talk about your planter. What do we got to do to your planter to make it better? How many go through your planter every year? A few of you? How about every couple of years? How many do it themselves? How many have your dealer do it? However you do it, make sure that everything is copacetic when you're doing this. Oh, the other thing, up here I have a few of these if anybody wants these. What they are is a little seed checker. How many, when you go out and plant, you always try to go dig afterwards, try to find out where you were? All of you? I tell you what, I have a hard time with it because of two reasons. Why? Number one, I can't find the darn seed. Or number two, I'm taking my clicker, and what do? Kick it right out of the roll. Yes, sir.
Another thing I have a problem with, they say the depth. You've got dirt pushed up there,
Mm-hmm.
and I never know where the top of the actual soil is, because when you close a row, you got it up. Where's your real depth?
I have a great solution for you, young man.
Yeah.
How many of you guys, how many of you folks, when you go out in the field, you actually loosen one row? Let's say you got a 12-row planter. Take the pressure off one gauge wheel, tie it up. Drive about 20 feet. On 30-inch spacing, you mark off 17.5 feet. Now, when you do that, and you're planting 34,000 seeds to the acre, how many seeds should be in that 17.5 feet? 34, exactly. So, now we've checked that our population is pretty close. What else do we check when we tie up that closing wheel? Depth. And what else? Other than singulation? Spacing. Now, I've been doing this planter meetings for 30 years, and all the meetings that I do, the same farmers come back, and I go through the same things, and they still haven't done what I asked them to do. But again, do you do that? Do you tie a closing wheel up on every row? Only if you want to, but I would check both sides of the planter. Planting that kernel, every kernel, is so very, very vital to success. Does that make sense? So let's get into it a little bit more. There's your 7 bushel to the acre. 1 cob. Man, when I saw that, that's impossible. Back growing up on a farm, I talked to one of the gentlemen this morning. We started out with a 494 John Deere planter. Then we went to a 400 cycle, central fill. Man, we're really going now. But then as the years progressed, and then back then, I just wanted to put the seed in the ground. Didn't care about anything else. But now, with seed corn at $300 a bushel, folks, there's not a lot of room for error, is there? So let's take a look at that. Where is the yield set on a stock? V4, V6 stage, about the 4th, maybe the 6th leaf. So making it proper seed bed, that's part of this. And I'm not here, again, folks, to sell tillage. We sell the sunflower tillage line, but what this is, how many guys do tillage in here? A little bit? What do you do for fall tillage? Vertical till? Nothing? What do you do for springtime then?
We're ridge tillers, so.
Okay.
I was disappointed you didn't ask who had a buffalo plant.
Oh, sorry, forgive me. Sorry. And young man, with finger pickup, right, on it?
Yeah.
Finger pickup on it, right?
Kinsey as well.
I'm sorry, but no, I'm just teasing. But no, I understand. In this part of Iowa, there was a lot of buffalo planters sold at that time. So I apologize, young man.
I understand.
So tillage practices, you'd be surprised today how many times I go out to a farmer's place. That planter is awfully important, isn't it? But what about that seed bed in front of the planter? And I learned this the hard way. I thought I knew so much about so many things. I was wrong. To me, a good, if you're doing tillage, fall tillage, maybe going out with the coulter chisel in the fall, turning it over, maybe going down 6 or 8 inches. It never ceases to amaze me. I go out to farmers and they'll have their chisel plow or an inline ripper. They've got that thing sunk to China. Anybody ever heard that before? So my question to you all is, let's say, how many know where your plow pan is? A few of you? If you got a plow pan set at 8 inches, for example, you don't have to go down 24 inches to China. Go down about another inch below your plow pan. Break that plow pan so the roots can go down. Now, on your fall tillage tool, how many change shovels? When you're supposed to. I hope some of you do. There's some of them, the shovels are down to the shank. And I can't make that up. Check your shovels on your tillage. Make sure it's level in the field. Now, in the springtime, what do you do for springtime?
6333.
Thank you, young man. Soil finisher. Doug, I appreciate that. So, now, I've gone out with guys with field cultivators, with soil finishers, with vertical till, with a disc harrow. How many of you go behind your spring tillage and move the dirt? If, let's say you're tilling 3 inches deep, you go out and you move your till, move your dirt that's loose. If you're 3 inches deep, do you have a flat, is it like this table underneath there? If it's like this and rolling, you're going to have a problem. So the other thing I learned, in the fall, what do you go at an angle in the fall? And what do you do for a spring? Do you go at an angle again, Doug?
No, in the fall I run an inline under the row zone,
Okay.
and in the spring I use RTK and stay with the tractor between those.
Okay, so you go with the rows. Now, as smart as I always thought, you take that finisher, you go with the chisel plow in the fall, one angle, you come back in the spring, you go the other angle with the tillage tool. I was wrong. Why was I wrong? Do you want that planter not to bounce? So go with the row in the spring. To give you an example, to see how good your field really is, if you go with the row and you start planting, take a half a can of pop, set it on your row unit, drive from one end of the field to the other end. If it's still on, you did good. If it bounces off within 5 feet, you got an issue. Every kernel needs to be planted properly. Tillage practice is so very, very vital. I don't care what color tillage you have. It doesn't matter. Now, I've gone out to people with field cultivators before. The shovels used to be 9 inches. The key word is used to be. Now they're down to 5. And they wonder why they got weeds coming up every so many inches. Make sure that your tillage is properly set also. Planting is so very, very critical. So if you want to plant it right, you buy a white. Now I put that in there. Yes, sir.
Okay, on a field cultivator. Now I've had my own and I've worked now with other people and they keep their sweeps on there, but you're not gonna get all your weeds with a field cultivator. I've never seen it. I've always seen escapes.
Okay.
Does that mean something's wrong? I mean, I've seen this across different models.
Everybody has a different. For example, on a sunflower, we're every 6-inch spacing on shanks. We run 9-inch sweeps. Mm-hmm. We try to overlap and get everything out of there.
Sure.
Now there's different companies out there. I don't know a lot of the names of everybody who has different sweeps. There's some farmers that come with 9-inch sweeps, so they put new ones on. They might put 7-inch sweeps on. But again, whatever it is, but no. The best thing for anything is to get every weed out to the best that you can. Now, the other thing that might happen, it's ironic. I went out this last spring with a finisher. Farmer had it set. Everything was good. We were pulling that finisher up front. We were going 2 inches in the ground. In the back, we were going 8 inches in the ground. And he was wondering why in the world it was pulling so hard. Plus, he had a shank he was missing. He didn't even know it. So my point is, make sure that finisher, like the planter, is always running parallel with the ground. Does that make sense? To this day, it still amazes me. A vertical till, for example, if you got a rolling basket back there, make sure that's not doing all the tillage on the vertical till. So there's so many little things. I wish I could have the pleasure to come out to each and every one of your places and see your operation. But obviously I can't. But take a look at everything. What do I do with my clicker? There it is. Everything that you do, that planted seed needs to have a proper seed bed the whole way around. Yes, sir.
What if you're no-till?
If you're no-till, what if you're no-till? If you're no-till, make sure your planter's leveled in the ground. And we're going to get into that, young man, in a little bit. Thank you. Great question. So, here's where we're going to talk about your no-till and any till. What kind of planter do you have, sir?
White.
What number?
8,000 series.
8,000 series? On your 8,000 series planter, you have 15-inch double disc openers. Same on a Kinsey, same on a John Deere, same on a Case, same on a Buffalo. 15-inch double disc openers. First thing that I'm going to come out to your place and check if you're looking to either upgrade planters or to fix your current planter. I'm going to measure your double disc openers. If they're 15 inches and your planter is 5 years old, I can guarantee you they're still not 15 inches in diameter. So how far down do you want them to get before you replace them? No more than an inch, exactly. So now, let's say that you don't want to put new blades on. You're going to keep them at 14 inches. What are a couple of things that you better do if you want to run that planter another year? I'm sorry? Reshim them, exactly. How do you do that, young man?
Pull the gauge wheel off, and pull your disc off, and then there's some shims on either side of your disc.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Both sides to do that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Contact.
Yep. How far contact up front should he be? Business card, maybe 2 inches, inch and a half on the front, two where the blades come together, give or take. So now, what's another thing you want to do after you set your double disc openers? One more critical thing that you better do.
If they're worn, you say?
Yeah, if they're worn.
Set the depth,
Exactly.
another notch.
Yes, sir. If you're losing an inch off those double disc openers, and you want to plant 2 inches deep when they're new, where are you going to be at when they're used? Probably an inch and a quarter, give or take. Double check your depth. Your depth in that planter is so very, very critical to success. Does that make sense? Yes, sir, Tom.
What else does worn disc openers do in the seed trench to create a bad situation for the seed?
Great point. How many can answer that? Yes, sir.
It'll create a W in
Uh,
the seed bed.
Exactly. Now, new seed disc openers should create a true V, correct? Now, if they're worn and they create that W, guess what happens? Huh?
Seats in the middle there on the high spot.
Right. Either that or they'll go on each side.
Yeah, but they're going to be erratic.
Yeah. So if you don't have a good seed to soil contact, you got a problem. So again, it all costs money. I understand that. But my question to you is, does it? When you lose 7 or 8 cobs to the acre, you better let's fix it now before we do anything.
Well, if you've got all the labor of going in and re-shimming, you might as well put new blades on.
Great point.
Yes.
Great point.
You ever heard the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Doug.
If you're going to put in the effort to tear the planter apart and reset the shims, it's false economy not to replace the blades while you're in there.
Exactly. Doug was saying, put new blades on when you're in there anyway. Cost of doing business. Now, one other little thing that we fail to realize and fail to look at when some of the farmers do this. Who knows what this piece is? It's a cast iron frog. Yes, sir, Fred. What does it do?
Firms that bottom.
Yes, sir. What else does this do? Protects the seed tube. What else does it do? It's an inside scraper, isn't it? Inside scraper of the disc openers. One other little thing, what does this thing back here do? If you want to put up pop-up fertilizer, you put your steel tube down there, or a rubber tube, or whatever you put down there. I've seen these things wear to a point where they're sharp. Now, I wish I could say I make that up too, but I can't. If this is wiggles in between there and runs back and forth as that planter is going down the field, you're going to wear this out, and the strength is going to be gone on your seed tube guard. Okay? So just a few other things. Now again, with Kinsey, Buffalo, John Deere, White, Case has got a little bit different opener. Seed tube. When you're in there, like you said, Doug, how many check the seed tube? I've seen these things wear off from here all the way up here. Anybody ever seen that? Now, that gets to not only our singulation, but our spacing. And I'll give this little story to you. It was kind of ironic. The session, Tom, we were in before, we talked about pork and pigs. Had a farmer tell me once on the planter. He said, Peterson, planting a kernel is like raising pigs. You got a sow with 10 baby pigs. 2 are runts. The 8 are pretty healthy. You can take those 2 runts away and actually feed them by hand and get them to catch up to the other pigs, right? If you drop 3 kernels of corn in one pile, you're going to have a problem. So make sure that that seed tube, when that's wore out, your spacing, your singulation, if you ever see a kernel on top of the ground, I've seen that too. And I pull it apart and show that the seed tube is actually basically broken. So that gets to the next point.
Can I ask you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's, I've seen beans on top of the ground.
Mhm.
I've never seen corn. I mean, I've seen beans for years and years, regardless of the condition of the planter.
Mhm.
And it always seems like it's kind of weird. I mean, that you're saying that 100%, that is a seed tube malfunction.
No, there's some other things too that, let's say you have a keep seed firmer, for example. You know, that could possibly pull a kernel on top of the ground. Let's say your closing wheels, and we'll talk about that too a little bit, maybe aren't quite set right. They're not over the seed trench. So there's a lot of things that can do that. And we'll talk about that a little bit too, but great point. Thank you. The other thing that we're going to come out and take a look at your planter, gauge wheel. We're going to come out and we're going to wiggle this gauge wheel. Anybody ever go behind your planter and wiggle your gauge wheel to see if the bushings are bad? And again, folks, I can't make some of this stuff up that I'm telling you. I went out to one guy's place and he put his planter away for the summer, and the gauge wheel was actually stuck up to the frame of the planter. Now, that's not a good thing. Or else I'd wiggle it and the gauge wheel bearing was bad. So, and it's a simple check. Now, if you got a bad gauge wheel bearing, you better check your gauge wheel arm too. Again, I don't care what color planter you have. If you can wiggle your gauge wheel, you have some issues that you need to have and be corrected, right?
Okay, Randy, what is the ramifications of an out-of-adjustment worn gauge wheel? What might you likely see because of that condition?
Great point, Tom. Now, the gauge wheel has a little bit to do with depth, right? So if you got a bad gauge wheel, your depth might not be, if you're 2 inches, you might be off an eighth, maybe a quarter inch, because that gauge wheel is loose. Do you have a good seed contact to the ground? Does that answer your question, Tom, at all? So make sure that the gauge wheels, if they're not tight, it all, like I said, we're trying to put this into a story from start to finish, tillage to the back of the planter. Make sense? And it's still amazing when I go out to a farmer's place. Yes, sir?
Would a loose gauge wheel cause a vibration into the row that might influence spacing?
Absolutely, Tom. If that gauge wheel's not riding properly on the ground, remember I suggested put a half a can of pop on your row unit to the other end of the field. If you got a bad gauge wheel and it's wobbling a little bit, you betcha. Now, the other thing, to Tom's point, if I come out to your place, I'm going to stand behind your planter row unit, I'm going to wiggle it. If I can wiggle your whole row unit, you have also another issue. What might that issue be? Bushings in the parallel arms, right? If your planter is 5, sometimes 10 years old, I went out to a farmer 2 years ago. He had a white planter that was 5 years old. Same seed plates were in there. He planted beans with it. Never took the plates off, never touched that planter. He said, I'm doing really good. I said, well, I'll give you a few little pointers if you like. That planter, folks, is the most critical investment that you can buy for your farm. Correct? I mean, you can buy a tractor, you can buy a piece of tillage, whatever. Everybody wants to combine 34,000 seeds, but to your point, young man, if I combine 28,000 seeds, it's not my combine's issue. It's not my tillage issue. It's a planter issue. So make sure that everything that you go through is viable on this planter. Double disc openers, make sure the bushings are good, the bearings are good. Everybody with the new white, we have a double roller ball bearing with a cast iron hub. Everybody says, what in the world do you want to do that for? You guys don't plant in rocks at all, do you? I didn't think so.
A friend of mine once said if it weren't for rocks, I'd have no topsoil.
That's a good point. So the point is, after you hit a few rocks with your double disc openers, you're going to have to replace something. Now everybody says, when you're tilling and you dig to China, you have probably a lot better chance of pulling up more rock from down there than you do from the top 8 inches, for example. So make sure everything is copacetic when you're planting. Seed depth adjustment. Some stories. Young man, you have the 8,000 series planter, right? How big a planter do you have?
It's a 1223.
1223? When you set your depth adjustment, do you and your dad do it or just you?
Yeah, it depends.
Okay. The reason I bring that up, I did one of these presentations, and afterwards the guy said, okay, fat boy, you stand up there and tell how good the depth is. Well, my depth is terrible. I said, what do you got for a planter? 16 row, 8,000 series white planter. On a white planter, we have a screw, a button, right? A lever that you screw to set the adjustment. In between there's a washer that's about 1/4 inch thick. The dad started on one end, the son started on the other end. The son measured from the front of the washer, the dad measured from the back of the washer. So the depth wasn't exactly on all 16 rows. So again, I don't care what color planter. On the new white ones, we have that lever on like Kinsey and Deere has. Now everybody sets it at 2 inches in depth. What if one misses it and sets it at 1 3/4 inches? It could have an effect. Have one person, Mr. Eulenhock, make sure that one person does the depth adjustment, okay? Just food for thought. So, Stephen? Stefan?
Hit the same button.
Oh, good. That's what I wanted to do. Thank you, sir. I didn't blow up. That's a good thing.
The other one's the eject button.
Yes, sir. Okay, good. Here's what I'm talking about here. With the new white planters on the gauge wheels, we have no greasers. It's a maintenance-free gauge wheel arm. Yes, sir. But on Kinsey and Deere and the 8,000 series white, there's a greaser that goes here. How many grease that greaser? Wonderful. Now, remember I was telling you earlier that I had a gauge wheel stuck up in the frame of the planter? The guy never greased the greaser. So we had no up and down. So little things make a big difference. Greasing. Yes, sir.
On those arms like that, long before I would perceive there's anything wrong, every one of those has a different seam that takes grease differently. After you get a brand new planter broke in a little bit, I mean, you can grease them every day or whatever. I've just always noticed that. Some will, a half a squirt will go out, it comes on the side, another one, you're just like this. Long before you really ought to be having to do maintenance. That's just a comment.
That's a great comment. I go out to a lot of guys' places and say, let's go grease your gauge wheel arm. Put the grease on, starts pumping it, the thing comes right off the greaser.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I'm just thinking about our system that we've had for close to 35 years. We've been organic. Started out ridge tilling, of course, in the early 80s, and just on 4 rows. Let's say we got 200 acres of corn, 150 acres of beans. Of course, we're faced with plowing alfalfa because that's what you do. Nobody yet has come up with a system to not plow alfalfa. I haven't heard anybody come up with it yet. And so, you know, we got the added incentive of $8.75 bushel corn right now, $18 beans. So, my point is that if guys in here are thinking about becoming organic, then you got to start thinking about weed control. So why we have 2 systems to this day is because guys like Tom and I did the weed count trials with ridge till versus conventional tillage 4 times in the last 25 years over different years. Every single year, it's the same thing. You have 5 to 7 times more weeds. I learned all this from PFI's founder, Dick Thompson. So we have never eliminated the ridge till because of that, plus soil erosion, etc. There's other benefits. But then it forces us to have a conventional planting system, so now we have a pretty up-to-date 8-row Kinsey. But also, if you're going to get into this and decide you want to go ridge till, buffalo, it's a lot harder to get your equipment updated. You almost got to go to Shafford Manufacturing out in western Nebraska, we go. But it's not easy.
No, sir.
And so my only point is, you know, there's a lot of reasons people do things. And I know a lot of the guys in here that are organic went away from ridge till, especially if you're on 12 rows or something in flat ground. We're not on flat ground. We got rolling hills. That's why we stay 4 rows and then have headlands so we don't have to turn around, etc. There's all kinds of tricks. But all I'm saying is you got to ask yourself, what is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? And then getting that planter, I totally agree with you. It's going to give me the incentive to do more with our buffalo. We got our Kinsey in great shape. Buffalo stinks on some things, like parallel linkage.
Right. And Ron, you bring up a great point. Whether you're organic, whether you're conventional, whether you're minimum till, whether you're ridge till, that planter has got to be accurate. So now, another question I forgot to ask. For 1 minute. If you're planting 34,000 seeds to the acre, that's the way you've always done it. That's the way Dad did it. That's what my agronomist said. What happens if we can get your planter up there a little bit better? Let's say then you up your population to 35,000 seeds to the acre, for example. Just a thought. All I'm doing is, pardon the pun, planting some seeds in your knowledge base. Okay, Thomas?
Okay, following Ron's point, we're organic for about 20 years with a beef cow herd. And 15 minutes into your lecture a year ago, what occurred to me is that I'm fundamentally wrong with too much emphasis on heavy-duty spring tillage. Because when I go back and take a look at over all the years I farmed, you have some springs that create conditions on spring moldboard plowed sod that you can create an environment that's consistent planting to. And I've had years over there, maybe a third of them that are disaster areas. When it's either too wet or too dry, you're asking the planter to do the impossible. As you gave that lecture, it occurred to me about the best thing I can do is to put my heavy-duty tillage into September when we need to plow to suppress weeds and to move manure down, and we have a reed spread, but September's a better month anyway. Follow with a cover crop and have far less spring tillage. So our spring tillage creates the environment that that planter has a reasonable place to plant into. I swear in the years I farmed, there's days I could take my hands, and if I went perpendicular in front of my planter, I'm asking the impossible.
Yes, sir.
It's too lumpy.
Yep.
It's got everything wrong. It is so inconsistent, it's pathetic, and no wonder my stand's inconsistent and my yield's inconsistent, and I can't rotary hoe and flame weed and cultivate on time. So there's a whole list of things here that can go wrong. But are we going against the grain by doing too much at the wrong time of the year? In my situation in northern Iowa, I know it's true.
Yes, sir. And Tom brings up a great point. How many of you on your planters run Residue Managers? And the reason I ask that is that residue manager, I don't care what kind it is, usually cleans about 7 inches away in front of the gauge wheels, right? Now, if you don't have them or you don't clean that residue off, those double disc openers are coming through the residue. At that point, what happens if you drop one of those kernels into a piece of residue? That's not a good thing. I say that again, Wendell? It's like poison. So make sure that seed bed for that planter, as Tom says, what happens in front of the planter is as important as what, oh, you got to buy there, young man, is as important as it is the planter itself. Does that make sense? So, closing wheels. This is another wonderful thing. John Deere, Kinsey, White, Buffalo, cases is a little bit different. I went out to a farmer's place this last spring, and I wish I could say I made this up. He had two 6,000 white planters. One was a 6-row, and one was a 12-row. We sold him a new white planter, but that's immaterial right now. He said, Peterson, all my rows, or so many of my rows, the seed trench is opening up after I planted. What did I do wrong? Now, again, I'm not an agronomist, but I've had to become an advisor, if that makes sense. So I asked him, what kind of ground did you plant into? Was it wet? Did it dry right away after you planted? What did you plant into? He said, no, I had pretty good planting conditions. So I said, do you mind if we go out and look at your planter? So it was out there, so I went out. I just was walking by, I just kicked one of the gauge wheels. That thing wiggled like it was a jukebox. I said, do you ever check your gauge wheels? He said, no, I haven't. He said, and he had all of them set at the 4th notch, the heaviest notch on the closing wheel. You know what I mean, on the John Deere, Kinsey, and White? I went back and lifted the whole gauge wheel, closing wheel assembly. The spring was still in there. Now this planter is 22 years old. You could pick up the whole closing wheel assembly. There was no close to it. I said, did you ever check your closing wheels? And he had out of the 6 rows, he had 3 bad bushings in the closing wheels. And one, the rubber part was what? Was all gone. And it's ladies and gentlemen, again, I've traveled the whole Midwest with planters. Nothing surprises me anymore. Period. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't know if it's really an answer to this. If you look on there, the area between the gauge wheels and the closing wheels, sometimes you have a sidey spot in the field. You get a chunk of side caught in there, and it raises the whole planter unit up. And if you plant a few acres with that, you get really angry with yourself.
Now, that's a great point, and I'm going to address that right now too. On a John Deere case and white, or John Deere Kinsey and white planter, your gauge wheels, you can set them a couple of 3 different ways. You can set them straight together, where they're level behind here. To your point, young man, let's say you get a corn root stuck between there. It has no way to really get out of there because it's so close together. It can't get out of there. So what I've been telling people to do, or suggesting to people, I'll never tell anybody what to do, but I'll make suggestions. Offset your closing wheels, and on them you're going to have shims back here. Maybe move them apart another inch. Does that make sense? Because that corn root has got to get through those closing wheels. If it gets stuck in that closing wheels, what does that do? It drags it screws up the whole day, doesn't it? So make sure that your closing wheels are adjusted right also. We have angle rubber, or we even have a cast closing wheels. Now, Tom was bringing up alfalfa. Oh, go ahead, Wendell.
I was going to ask, okay, you got them parallel and you got them offset.
Yep.
What's everything else aside? What's the difference in the job that gets done? And why is it they're all offset? I mean, from the factory, that's just how you do it.
And that's a great point. Now, I've gone out, and I'm going to just bring this story. I got a lot of stories, so I tell you. I went out to one farmer, he had all 12 of his closing wheels like this. Now, what do you think could happen that way? What'd you say? What, young man? It's side draft, exactly. So if you're going to put them like this, do half on one side and the leading half on the other side. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that way, when you drive straight, you're driving straight.
I wouldn't have thought it was that sensitive.
Yes, sir. It's kind of like my wife. It's very sensitive. So I'm just teasing. But anyway, so yeah, make sure that your springs aren't broken there. How many adjust your closing wheel arm? And you can just pull it down, you got a broken spring. You don't know that. You lift that whole assembly up. So make sure that you check all the little things. Make sense? So, residue managers. There's so many different residue managers out there. I couldn't tell you, and I get questions all the time. What kind of residue managers are you going to put in my planter? Are you in a minimum till? Are you no-till? Are you organic? What do you do? What do you want your planter to do? So there's a number of different questions. You want a combination residue manager? You want one wheel? You want two wheels? You want frame mounted? You want unit mounted? Suggestion there, always go unit mounted on your planter. We used to sell frame mounted coulter. Why would you not want to go with a frame mounted coulter? That does not follow the contour of the ground. If you have any rolling hills at all, if you're planting 2 inches deep and you go over a little knob, that frame mount is going to go 4 inches deep. So make sure that you're unit mounted because it follows the contour of the ground. Make sense? Now, I put this in here. It's, again, one of my favorite slides. And I'm not here to put the white planters with precision. How many of you guys have electric motors on your row units? Probably not too many. How many have chains, bushings, bearings, gauge wheels, greasers, flex shaft drives, drive chains, gauge wheels, or not gauge wheels, on your row unit? How many? You got a chain drive on your row unit. How many oil them? I have another suggestion. It costs money, but I'm going to only tell you this. Every year after you're done planting, cut those chains off and put new ones on for next year. Make sense?
Oiling
I'm sorry?
instead of oiling?
Instead of oiling. Well, no. I would oil them as the year goes on, too. Because they're in dry weather, wet weather. You get... Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say on them chains, I've heard that both ways. You put all lubricants are wet, so they draw dirt. So now you got a bunch of dirt, and all the pivot points, versus dry, which you're gonna wear because they're dry, but you're not getting dirt, as much dirt in there. But just a thought. Tell me
Now, a great point, Wendell. Now, let's say you put new chains on every year and you don't grease them and you're in the dirt and the grease. Not only the chains, remember now the sprockets. If the sprockets don't get the lubrication, guess what happens to them? Again, I've gone out to farmers' place, they've never greased the chains in their planter. And it's 10 years old. And it sits outside. That chain can't go around the sprocket. It's stuck, it's tight. So all the little things make a big difference, whether you got flex shaft drive, Tom?
Okay, we're talking drive lines now. Talk about what drive lines do that can negatively affect seed placement and spacing.
Great point, Tom. Another,
Touches everything.
yep. Well, how many have drive shafts? So you got a 12-row planter, you got a drive shaft, or you fold that planter around. The shafts come into a clutch type thing. I had a farmer at New Hampton last year. He had a John Deere planter. Afterwards, he said, Peterson, that was the best thing I've ever heard. Until you said what you said, I would never have checked it. And what it was when your planter unfolds and those shafts, that flex shaft, comes into the clutch. Now, if it comes in and it's got to spring up the shaft to get into the clutch, you got a problem. If that shafts don't come straight together, if they offset a little bit, you got that tooth that goes around that catches the clutch. What happens when it speeds up and slows down? Speeds up and slows down. First thing somebody's going to tell me on my white planter, your planter sucks. Well, why? What's wrong? So I went out to the guy's place. That shaft was off, a whole shaft. Now, again, I wish I could make that up. Now, how do you straighten that? How do you get that back into sync? Loosen the bearing right beside it, okay? Fold it together, make sure it comes in straight. When it comes in straight, tighten the bolts back up. Now, I've had some guys with the clutches. You know that tooth on the end of the clutch when it comes around? It was worn halfway off. They don't check the little things. Now, to Tom's point, if that goes around, that shaft goes around faster, slows down, around faster and slows down. You think that's going to have something to do with your singulation? Absolutely. And your spacing. So everything on that planter, from the drive shaft to the chains, to the bushings, to the bearings, there's a lot on a planter. And it's so amazing until you start checking one thing, then you check another thing. When I come out to your place, those are the things I'm going to look at. Now, some of the other things, some little things. Tires. On a 12-row planter, how many tires are on the 12-row planter? 6? Give or take. I've gone out to farmers before we're planting. I go up and I kick the tire, and it's flat. You can't tell it in the field. Little things. Check air pressure in every one of your tires. Make sure they're all the same. Yes, sir.
That includes the rubber drive tires. too.
That includes, great point. The tires, like up there, the gauge wheel here, the drive, I've gone out to people, and that runs against the main drive wheel, okay? I've gone out, those things are flat. The guys don't even know it. So check the little things and make sure they're all copacetic. Yes, sir.
I've heard, now this is on precision, or I guess the 2020 system or whatever, they have 100 different things being checked, that literally one row's been off and they've gone and changed it. That probably did look bad. It probably looked like the rest of it, and by chance, it shows up and made a difference.
Wendell, that's a great point. That's coming up in some of my next pictures, okay? Now, how many on your monitors always tell you exactly what the planter's doing? Now, the reason I'm saying that is I've been around our monitors at AGCO that you have a seed that gets stuck in a cell. It still shows on the bar graph it's okay, and it's not. I've seen, how many guys have a center fill planter? A few of you? How many, when you dump seed bags in there, that you actually forget and you put the string in with it? And it comes all the way down to the row unit. I got pictures. I'll show you that here in a little bit. Now, again, folks, I'm telling you because it's happened to me. Little things. What happens when you leave a soybean kit in instead of when you're planting corn? I done that. Not real bright, but stuff happens. You drop a label gets stuck. On a 2020 monitor, Wendell, to your point, that'll tell you right now. On our older monitors, you could plant the whole darn field and not know there's an issue. So make sure your monitor's up to this is a 2020 precision monitor. It tells you everything that you want to know. Singles, doubles, skips. It's very, very accurate. Here's a picture that I took. Has anybody ever done dumb things? I didn't think so, because I have. So if I can relate some of these stories to you, so when you dump your bags in, make darn sure the string is with the bag, not with the planter.
Are you going to talk about seed treatments?
I wasn't going to, but we can.
Well, I just was wondering.
Yeah.
Because, you know, here's the miracle seed treatment you're supposed to put in, mix it up with a broom handle.
That's a great, we'll talk a little bit about that right now. Seed treatment. Oh man, already, Stefan? We may have to catch that off if that's okay.
That's fine, but it's out there.
Seed treatment, talcum powder, everything's different. Some sticks, some static electricity, and all this stuff. We'll talk about that after a bit. Well, how many go out to their fields and they have a field like this. It's not too bad, is it? Except for that gap down here, right? What else do you see?
Doubles.
No, doubles. Uneven plant height. We've done, and Tom knows this, we've done last 2 years we've done crop tours where we actually put doubles in. We actually put skips in to show you what can happen to your planter if it's not adjusted right. So take a look at this field here. How about that field? I hope and I pray every one of you want not only this particular part of your field like this, all your fields like this, whether it's corn or whether it's soybeans, whether it's rye, whatever it is, singulation, that planting that seed accurately is so very, very vital. Tom.
Randy, what is the optimum timing window from the time the first plant is emerged above the ground until the last plant is emerged above the ground for optimum yield?
Tom, great point. We're going to get to that here real quick. We're going to talk about that.
We got 5 minutes.
Cheapers, creepers. I could go on for another hour. But anyway, depth. Look at the depth, correct depth. That has so much to do with your emergence. You have a field like this. What do you think?
Floater track.
Yeah, and over here. So what we've done, anybody ever seen that in your field? Well, I understand. So let's take a look at some other things. What is this called right there?
A weed.
Weed. Now, does that have to do with depth? Absolutely. We flagged some kernels here. Came up in 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, and a week. The difference in population, singulation, yield was amazing. What happened here? Maybe it's Mother Nature, I don't know. But maybe it's depth also. Look at these compared to the other stocks. We did this in Edgewood, Iowa, 2 years ago. We had a white planter with precision on. We turned the turn compensation off. Anybody ever go around hills, terraces, and all that? You see in here, we planted it really, really thick, and out here, we didn't plant so thick. We had a jungle over here and a half a jungle here. So here's on row 24, 21 years. Look pretty good, don't they? We planted 34,000 seeds to the acre. Center rows, we had 30 years. Not too bad. Look on the inside rows. So make sure your chains are all up to date from row 1 to row 12. Your flex shaft drives, whatever you have to drive. You'd like cobs all like this on all 24 rows. These are nothing but nubbins. The quality of corn. Everybody wants to plant rounds, right? Everybody, medium rounds is best for everybody. On a cob of corn, how many rounds are there? Not many. Large, I haven't seen a large round even, Wendell. If it has, it's been a lot of years ago. Medium rounds and small rounds is what I see. So, correct singulation, poor singulation. Look at the difference. And again, I hate to go so fast, but Stefan says I only have so long. Here's the depths. We planted from 1 inch deep all the way to 3.5 inches deep. Look at the loss if you plant too deep. Or if you plant too shallow. That seed to soil contact is so very, very critical. Selecting a seed depth that affects every seed consistent to what you're planting in. You want to feel like that? I don't think so. So, delta downforce, as far as downforce on the row unit, oh, I got to bring that up now too. Okay. How many have springs in their planters for hold down the row units? How many adjust them? On the white planter, we have heavy-duty down pressure springs. On the parallel links, correct me if I'm wrong, young man, you take them two levers and you move them up and down on the parallel links, right? Now, I get a lot of farmers say, where should I set my springs? What kind of field are you in? You got sand, you got loam, clay, where do you want to be? How much seed is in the hopper? Whether it's centrofill or whether it's box planter, right? I'll tell everybody, the starting point, set it at about 100 pounds to hold that row unit on the ground. All those springs do is hold that row unit from bouncing, correct? So, again, with delta downforce from precision, it automatically adjusts every row. You don't have to adjust anything. So, that's what that is. Here's probably my favorite slide in the whole slide deck. We had Edgewood, we planted 1,000 acres. There are 7 planters we had throughout the Midwest. Different drivers and everything. What amazed me was the average speed was 4.6 miles an hour. The average acres per hour. Look at the singulation. 99.6 on every planter. Look at the good spacing. The loss of ground contact. Good downforce. Excessive downforce. Again, gentlemen, I don't care what color planter you have. That's what you should strive for. If you're planting 34,000 seeds to the acre, I hope you can plant or combine 34,000, but maybe it's 33. Again, 1% germination and all that. I realize that. But that planter is so very, very critical to a planting, to getting that seed planted right in the ground.
And Randy, I'd like to add to that that organic seed probably has less viability, which makes the planter adjustments even more critical yet.
Yes, sir.
And organic crops or specialty crops have more value. So you have a higher risk, a higher reward ratio. We're living really in a different world.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And Tom, and it gets to your point, young man. If you're planting 34,000 and you're combining 28, what can you do to that planter to get it so you can plant and combine 34,000? Because even if you're losing 5 cobs to the acre, that's 40 bushel to the acre. If you're planting 200 acres of corn, how much is that? $10,000 times 5 years. All I'm saying is, make sure everything on your planter is copacetic for next year. Any questions before we stop? Yes, sir.
Over the years in PFI, we've had a number of people do trials using in-furrow firming.
Mm-hmm.
In every case, there's been a yield loss.
Okay.
What's going on?
Great, Doug, that's a great point. Keep seed firmers, rebounders. Again, I've been with white planters. I said, why do we ever need them for? As long as we get a good seed to soil contact, we're fine. But with the rebounders and the ketons, if you're planting a little bit moist ground, could it stick? If you're too dry, is it not getting into moisture? So I can't really answer that, Doug, per se, because right now, I guess on the planters that we sell, I'd probably say it used to be 30% of the planters I sold had keton seed firmers on. Now I think it's probably closer to 60%, if not more. It's just getting that seed and soil contact.
In theory, it should be better.
Yes, sir. I agree.
So is it a case that the seed's getting a quarter inch deeper than
Well, that could be. Or is your seed, did your seed firmer get put in correctly?
this is not me?
Oh, no, but
Yeah.
great point.
Yeah. So
If that-
something wrong. ahead of it.
If that is wrong, something wrong ahead of it, to your point, absolutely.
Well, I know you're out of time. I've had a white plant before and liked it very much. I'm just curious make a sales point. Why on the depth control wheel there, why took the turn to the outside up
Oh.
versus international or somebody did just the opposite?
Okay, back on the old 5100 planter, we had 4-inch by 16-inch gauge wheels. We went to 4.5-inch. We put a lip up there to help clean that disc opener off.
Okay.
Does that make sense,
Yes.
Wendell?
Yes.
So just to try to make it,
Okay, that's for the disc opener. That
Yes, sir.
has nothing to do with
no, sir.
the down
It's
pressure
still-
on the soil.
No, that had nothing to do. That's
Okay.
just to help.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Anybody ever plant in mud? I didn't think so. That's what that was supposed to help. Because before, when we planted in mud, it built up between the disc opener and the gauge wheel. And man, when those plugged,
Yeah.
it was not. I got called some names and some weren't nice. But, so that's what that's for. If that makes sense, Wendell. And that's the same whether Deere, Kinsey, or anybody. Yes, sir.
Residue managers, when do you replace them?
That's a great question, Chris. How many years have you had them? Have you measured? What kind do you have?
Just got a Kinsey,
Oh,
3600.
okay, what kind of, I'm sorry, no, I'm just teasing, but what kind of residue manager you get? Yetter, Dawn?
Yetters that are on it, yeah.
You get the tiger tooth, or did you get the fingers?
Tiger tooth.
When the sharpness is off that thing, then you might want to take a look. If it wears down ½ inch, for example, because those shark tooth, as we call them, they're very aggressive on the soil, very aggressive with the residue, and all you want to do is clean that residue off to make a good seed bed for your double disc openers to go through. Correct? Great questions.